Greetings friends, it's Zera, back with another video. Today we're just going to talk briefly, ever so briefly, about Broodlord in BWL. So, here as you can see, this is my VOD from my Twitch. I didn't bother downloading this time, just wanted to mix things up a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and mute it as well. Now, as you're doing this, you probably already cleared you should have already cleared all the whelps up to this point on the right side of the room, cleared the small pack over here. Now all we have to worry about is pulling Broodlord. So we're going to pull him over in this corner on the other side of this wall, and the DPS, all the range DPS, is going to get up against the gate. So we're also going to deal with dealing this pack of whelps. It's like right here. So we're just in standby mode right now. We're fixing to pull. The most important thing to remember for this fight is you want to stay out of range of the blast wave. You want to make sure you stay, again, under your main tank's threat meter. As long as you do that, you as a hunter will be fine. Now, there's a couple of things we need to talk about, obviously, because there's this different meta here that I've more or less dabbled with. So I want to see what you guys think in the comment section. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and see the pull be performed. We get as far towards Broodlord as we can without getting in his cleave range. We pull a whelp or two. Actually, I think it's just the one singular whelp. Yes, beautiful. So there's the blast wave. So right off the bat, I sent my owl in, and my owl got blasted, and he's almost completely out of hell. So what I've come to understand is, don't send your pet in until after that initial blast wave. Once the initial blast wave occurs, then you can send your pet in. Because honestly, the blast wave, from what I can tell, has, I think, a minimum 10 to 15 second cooldown, but he doesn't necessarily cast it immediately. Looking at the logs, he's kind of sporadic with his blast wave. Sometimes it's a clear, 12 seconds from the time he initially casts it, he'll cast it the second time. Sometimes it's like 15 or 20 or even 25, 30 seconds. It's pretty sporadic. So I don't put my pet in because he almost immediately will use blast wave, and then he could be another 10, 15, 20, 25 seconds before he'll cast it again. So just send your pet in, and your pet will be fine after that initial blast wave. And what you'll notice here, and I don't think I realized it until after the fact, so you see me, I pop my quick shots, my rapid fire, my Devil Star Fury. You guys can see a lot of my weak auras in action. I've got my healer mana pool up here on the top left. I've got my buffs here. It's really beautiful. I love this way I've got this set up. I've got my history of abilities being used up here in the top right. It's very, very nice. So if I'm just unloading, and my pet is actually using Screech. I don't know if you can see it. It's right here. It's this debuff slot right here. The pet is using Screech, which is why I have the owl, because Broodlord has an enormous ability known as Mortal Strike that does tremendous amount of damage on the tank. I think its damage is multiplied by its original value. I don't remember what the number is, but it does a great deal of damage. Matter of fact, I think this is the only fight in the entire raid where our tanks are using shields right now, because the damage is just that crazy. So, like, I think our first attempt, when we killed him first time up in week 1, but I think our main tank's health went from, like, I don't know, 8k, 9k or something like that, all the way down to like 2k. I mean, like, one shot, it was like boom, and we were all like, whoa. Of course, we were all expecting it, so the healers were just throwing out heals and everything else to keep him up. So I had an idea to use the owl to sort of stagger that damage. And basically what I mean is, like, the uptime on Screech is about 60 or 70%, give or take, if you just have the one pet, the one owl. So if you do it right, then you might be able to time Screech to go off around the time that Mortal Strike's going to come off cooldown. But again, just like Blast Wave, it is not a guaranteed, like, as soon as it comes off cooldown, he's going to swing Mortal Strike. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So you can't really time it right. So again, you basically just have to put Screech on autocast and just hope for the best. Now, what I've learned is, by looking at my logs, that 60-70% uptick of Screech doesn't always coalesce with the Mortal Strike. Just as you would figure a 60-70% uptick on Screech having to co-align with, like, 2 or 3 exact moment in time when Mortal Strike's going to go off, it happens like 50% of the time. But when it does happen, there was a log, and I might pull it up here towards the end of the video, I don't know. There's a log of my tank where he had only 8,000 armor in one fight and only 10,500 armor in another. And the difference between the damage of the multi-strikes was the mortal strikes damage was more or less the exact same. Even though he had 2,000 more armor in one particular instance and 2,000 less armor in the other, the damage of the mortal strike was the exact same. So that tells me, and of course the time where he was using more armor, I wasn't using Screech, I was using a cat. And the time where he had less armor, I was actually using the owl. So, does it work? Yes. Does it work consistently enough to where it needs to be the new meta? I don't think so. I think that's a question that only you and your team can really come up with, you and your raid leaders. I actually had one of my best friends, Twidget, who's a real good friend of mine. He stepped away from raiding for the time being. Hope he comes back to it eventually. He and I actually discussed it. We're like, look, if we both used an owl and we staggered it, and I sent my owl in and I procced my Screech, and then as soon as my pet got, focus dumped, you send yours in, and then at that point, theoretically, when one pet is focus starved and can't cast Screech anymore, the other one will have its focus back. So they should be able to stagger a little bit easier and have closer to, and we can tighten up that 60-70% window to be more like a 85 to 95% window, where like majority of almost all of the fight is entirely covered by the melee attack power debuff. Problem is that you're talking about taking up a debuff slot and everything else. We personally hadn't really discussed debuff slots until this past week, and I think what we come up with is Screech not even being mentioned. So is that going to change, case by case, fight by fight in future raids? I don't know. I don't remember enough about AQ40, to be honest. We never got past, in my vanilla guild, we never got past the first boss in AQ40. Not because we were terrible, but because a lot of people had burned out, didn't want to play anymore, and we were basically just focusing on 20-man content. We were clearing ZG in AQ20 like clockwork. It was easy. There was so much ridiculousness. Like, we kept kicking ourselves, like, let's merge with another guild, and people didn't want to do that. So, TLDR, we never cleared AQ40. We never even attempted Nax. So, getting to see all this later content that I never got to experience to the fullest is going to be great. But my memory is so shoddy because my only memory of Nax is its watered down Wrath version, and my only memories of AQ are primarily in AQ20. So I don't know enough about the AQ40 fights or the Nax Remus fights from vanilla to be able to say with certainty that the owl won't be desired in any of those fights like Broodlord. But it's really unfortunate because if you could, honestly, if you could just simply grab a pet, bring it in for a single fight, this would be the fight you'd use it on. Now, as far as alternating, the owl actually does pretty significant damage. It does. Its damage multiplier is not quite as high as the cat's, but you can get, the 1.0 second attack speed bat, and ZG is going to be released very, very soon. You can put Claw on him, you can put Screech on him, and then you can just piggyback back and forth. And you won't have to worry about using, wanting to buy abilities like Prowl, so you can just piggyback back and forth between Screech and Claw. So there's a usefulness for the owl because it can do the same thing. Just doesn't have quite a high as attack speed as Broken Tooth, but attack speed doesn't really matter. It's that damage multiplier, and Cat's damage multiplier is just a bit higher than your owls or your carrion birds or other ones that have, relatively medium to higher DPS multipliers. So anyway, in a nutshell, this fight is pretty much just let your pet just wail on him from range. Again, you want to try and avoid that first blast wave, but then after that you're fine. So for example, Archimedes got blasted with that initial blast wave, and he never even remotely, I don't think he gets damaged again in the entire fight. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. He's still sitting at 367 health. It's pretty absurd. Oh, somebody just healed him. See, look at that. Somebody just threw up a heal on him, and it's wonderful. I love to see that. And there's Mortal Strike on our main tank. Now, I don't know how much damage our tank takes here, but let me see here. Let me go ahead and rewind here. Oh, that's way too far. Okay, so right here, Dom's health is at max health. And Screech is up. And there's Mortal Strike. He's still at full health. Screech is still on the boss. And it took 3,300 damage. So, pretty significant damage, but without the Screech, I could probably imagine that it would be even worse than that. I can't say for certain how much worse, but I'm just going to say this. I've seen Dom's health go from like almost 9,000 down to like 2,000. So, essentially, you're talking about maybe 45% of its original value. But I don't know. That may be because of things like Demoralizing Shout stacked on top of Screech. It could be the fact that it didn't crit. It could be the fact that Dom's wearing, full mitigation armor instead of his FR gear. Because sometimes, the tanks, they derp. They forget to swap out their armor sets. So, like I said, this fight is pretty straightforward. I literally just threw my pet in here and I just let him rock. He can survive Blast Wave as long as he's got full health, but I'm not gonna stop the min pet. That's stupid. I'm not gonna do that. So I just got lucky. One of the healers decided to heal my pet up a little bit. I'm not communicating that at all. I'm not saying, hey, I need somebody to heal my pet. I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna eat up comms to say that. My pet dies. But another reason that I like being able to use this owl is because it gives me the opportunity to add something to the raid. Whereas if it's just my cat's going to go and it's going to DPS for 10, 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds at the most, and it's just going to die. Because there's no way to really do it. There's no countdown to Blast Wave. There's no way to see it coming or know it's coming. The only thing you can do is, okay, well, it's going to be off cooldown in, say, 10 seconds. You could hypothetically set up a weak aura to count down 10 seconds from the time that he casts Blast Wave. That way you know to pull your pet out once that 10-second timer is up. But you never know. It could be 5 seconds after that timer goes off. It could be just as the timer goes off. It could be another 10, 20 seconds after the timer goes off. There's no real set way to know when Blast Wave is going to go off. DBM can't really help you, and a countdown's not really going to be able to help you much other than saying, hey, this is probably... You probably guess what the minimum cooldown is, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to use it right then and there. So I might try that and see if my DPS increases on Broodlord, because yes, while my pet is here, it's halfway through the fight. It's more than halfway through the fight at this point. He's still up. He's still doing damage. If I had a cat and I was doing, spamming claw left and right, I very well could just pull him out and then send him right back in once Blast Wave goes off, and he can avoid the damage. So, like, for example, that's a third Blast Wave, and my pet's already almost down to nothing, and yet somehow he's still alive. I don't know. I probably just, honestly, what I need to do, I need to investigate what the healer is, because I'm looking at it right now. The healers are about 45% mana. You can see right here, this tells you where everybody's at. You got, 13%, 16.7%, 17%, 26%, 40s, 50s, and the 60s. So average it out, you're looking at about 40% mana pool is what most of the healers have on average. So I probably just need to find out who was healing my pet in that fight, look at the logs and review it, and send them a mana potion and say, hey, thank you for healing my pet. And see if they're willing to continue that trend, and if not, no big deal. But if they are, why not? You've got some healers that are rocking like 70% mana almost, and this fight's just getting over. But I mean, you can tell just by looking at this who is the main tank healer and who's just healing range, because the range's not taking a whole lot of damage, and you've got people from Ava, Captain Matt, Serenity's Vive. Vive I think is actually the main tank healer, so him being at 50% is a really good representation, because he's actually a really efficient healer, so he's not going to force himself to go So, but the rest of these are probably healing a lot of the melee. So you got your pinheads, your nutties, your Kalas, your Clasias. They're healing the melee. So good on them, but I'm just wondering who the hell was healing my pet, because it sure wasn't me. Anyway, guys, that about does it for Broodlord. There's not a whole lot to it, especially for range. We basically just sit outside of his... You sit at max range as far as you can and just unload on this guy. Now, I will say this. I did pick up ash candy this week, so I'll be looking forward to doing a lot of melee weaving. So we're probably going to have to do a second set of these to discuss, what bosses are going to be efficient for melee weaving, which ones are not. So I'll be looking forward to that. I'm kind of excited. Tuesday's video is going to be a lot of fun. Y'all going to really enjoy that, all right? I love you guys as always. Hope you guys enjoy the video. If you do, leave a like. Let me know down in the comment section what I could have done better. And as always, I'll see you in the Discord. Happy hunting, everybody. Zera out.